The Harry Potter HBO series has genuinely a massive advantage over the original films that I don't think enough people are talking about. As someone who actually read all of the books as well as listened to the multiple Audible versions at this point, I just got done listening to the full cast audiobook edition of Deathly Hallows and I thought that was really great. Let's just say Harry Potter is my life and I've got a really specific perspective on what got lost in the original adaptation and what an episodic TV format can actually bring back to the table. The movies are iconic. I love them. Heck, I could recite them by memory. It's that bad, or I guess it's that serious, but they'll always have a special place in my heart and in, the pop culture history. But the truth is, whenever you compare them directly to the source material, there are genuinely some big gaps in what actually made it on screen. But the HBO show has the chance to fix every single one of those gaps, so let's go ahead and talk about it. Okay, so let's actually start with the actual, root of the issue, because this is the entire reason this conversation even matters. The majority of the Harry Potter films genuinely had a brutal runtime limit to really work off of. Each book had to be adapted into roughly 2.5 hours of theatrical runtime. Now for the early books, there was already a stretch, but for the later ones, it was essentially impossible. Think about what that actually meant. Like the Philosopher's Stone is roughly 320 pages. Chamber of Secrets is about 380. Prisoner of Azkaban is closer to like 450. As soon as you hit Goblet of Fire, all bets were off. Like we're talking upwards of 800 pages. Trying to fit nearly 1,000 pages of novel into a 2.5 hour movie is just not possible without major cuts. Now the directors did the best they could with the format they had. Chris Columbus set up the early visual identity. Alfonso made Prisoner of Azkaban one of the best fantasy films ever made in my opinion. And Mike Newell and David Yates really carried the franchise through some of the most genuinely tough adaptations. But none of those filmmakers were really given the runtime they actually needed to tell the full story, which resulted in the films like essentially being like highlight reels of the books. Now obviously the biggest plot points are there, the most important character moments are there, but everything in between, all of the nuance, the world building, and the small character moments that made the books feel truly alive, well, those got entirely cut for time. But that's unfortunately the reality of trying to compress massive novels into theatrical runtimes. Like it's just so difficult. And because of that, one of my biggest criticisms of the original films is how rushed things got in the later entries. The early movies actually had decent room to breathe. Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets aren't perfect, but they let you really live in Hogwarts. You see the great hall meals, you got the Quidditch matches that really felt alive. It actually felt like the characters are actually going to school. But by the time you get to Half-Blood Prince and especially Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, the films are essentially sprinting from plot point to plot point, like they're going ham. Massive book subplots get completely cut, important character backstories get reduced. The Battle of Hogwarts in the final film, which I still criticize till this day, like that takes up like 200 pages of the book. And it's one of the most emotionally really devastating sections of the entire novel. It got compressed into a relatively quick cinematic action sequence. Like that was really it. Now if you went in only knowing the movies, of course you're not going to complain, but for somebody that read the books first, it was pretty unfortunate. Like there are character deaths in those final films that really hit you because you know the source material, not because the films actually earned the emotional weight, because they really didn't. If you're a book reader, you took all that context into these films and you're like, okay, well let me just go ahead and make it all make sense in my head because I had the context and really picture what the movie would look like if they actually adapted things correctly. I don't know about you guys, but I do that a lot whenever I'm reading. I'll actually picture everything how it would look on the movie screen. It's actually really weird. I don't know if you guys do that. When I'm reading, I'm thinking scene by scene and imagining what it would look like through the lens of the big screen, like I said. But I feel like the HBO show really does have the opportunity to fix most of this. Each book is getting an entire season of dedicated runtime. The later books finally are going to get the space they need. The third task in the Goblet of Fire is hopefully not going to be butchered. What do you mean there was a blast-ended Scroot or an acromantula in the maze? Or my favorite one, the Sphinx that was in there. Who would have thought they would have not put that in there? It's actually insane. And hopefully with the pacing of a full season, they can finally match the source material a little bit better instead of cramming everything that they can on the big screen. Were those movies successful? Of course they were. I straight up love them so much. But again, I just want better for Harry Potter. I do feel like this HBO series has such an opportunity to really get things right. Maybe they can go the way of Game of Thrones, but this time end it correctly. Or the Wheel of Time, which we're not going to mention. We're not going to mention Wheel of Time, okay? Or The Witcher, we're not going to mention that either. But what I'm really excited for is Hogwarts actually feeling like a real school year, which this is genuinely a change that I am really excited about. The original films never really captured the feeling that Harry was attending school for an entire year. You would see a class or two, maybe a Quidditch match here and there, a couple common room scenes, and then suddenly it was Christmas, and then suddenly it was the final exam, and then boom, the school year is over. The books have a completely different rhythm to them. They genuinely feel like an entire year. You see Harry struggling with schoolwork. You watch him take exams. The Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was an actual place where students live and learn, not just a backdrop for the big plot moments. The show can have entire episodes dedicated to a specific stretch of the school year. We could spend more time in classes that the movies, completely skipped over, and see characters interacting in moments that, have nothing to do with the main plot, which that right there really is the magic of the books. Like, the school feels alive. The characters feel like real students dealing with real student problems on top of the magical craziness happening around them. And apart from more money, that is hopefully the reason of them doing the HBO adaptation in the first place. But now let's actually get to the brass tacks. Like, let's talk about some stuff that didn't make it into the original films that, in my opinion, have to show up. There are entire subplots from the books that were completely cut from the movie adaptations, and for, us book readers, those cuts have always been, really frustrating. Like, for instance, Peeves the Poltergeist. Like, how he genuinely got cut from the entire franchise is insane to me. Peeves is one of the most, entertaining characters in the books for me. He brings that comedic, chaotic energy to Hogwarts in a way that no other character does. Completely cutting Peeves from the films, really did remove an entire layer of personality that Hogwarts is known for. And I, for one, am looking forward to seeing who they decide to cast for Peeves in this new show. Next up, we have Hermione's Spew Campaign, or the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, where Hermione tries to organize a house elf liberation movement, which is a really important character development arc for her across multiple books. It's also interesting how Hermione thinks about justice and how, she sometimes gets it wrong because she doesn't actually listen to the perspectives of the people she's trying to help. Well, that thing, got completely cut from the films. Next up, Charlie Weasley exists in the films, but is essentially just a name. In the books, he is a more present character with his own personality and a genuine career with dragons in Romania. But if we're being real, the entire Weasley family in general is a lot deeper in the books than in the films, obviously. The Marauders backstory also is significantly more in depth in the books. We learn how James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter Pettigrew actually became friends. We see why the connection to each other as well as their fates mattered so much later in the story. The films covered the generalities, but really never the emotional side of things. Every single one of these cuts can finally be restored in the HBO series, and there's so much more. These are just the ones that are at the top of my head. With the more runtime, the more episodes, and the more room to breathe, they can, finally show what made the books feel so alive. Next up, Harry Potter at its core is genuinely a mystery series. Every book is built around a central mystery that Harry and his friends have to slowly uncover throughout the school year. Who is the heir of Slytherin and Chamber of Secrets? What is Sirius Black actually doing in the Prisoner of Azkaban? Who put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire? Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire, Harry? Did you tell one of the older students to do it? Are you absolutely sure? Yeah, we get pretty weird here, but yeah, each book really does follow that slow mystery structure. Clues get planted early on in the chapters. Side characters become suspects. The entire mystery really, tightens up into one climactic reveal, and that is the core storytelling DNA of the entire series. Apart from a couple films, most of them really did lose that structure. With such a little amount of time, only 2.5 hours to work with, the mysteries had to be compressed with a lot of, really rapid exposition dumps and quick reveals. You didn't really have the time to, have that slow burn because the runtime just didn't allow for it. Now, in my opinion, if the HBO series builds the early seasons properly, taking the time to establish the world, the characters, and the rhythms of Hogwarts life, then the later emotional moments are going to hit way harder than they ever did in the films. The reason the Battle of Hogwarts in the final book is so emotionally devastating is because we spent 7 years with these characters. We watched them grow up. We watched their friendships deepen. We watched the world they loved slowly fall apart around them. And by the time the final battle happens, every single character death feels like a gut blow because we had to live with these people for years. If they take season 1 and 2 of the show, plant us inside Hogwarts, build out the characters, establish the relationships, and let us live in the world, show don't tell, then by the time we get to the darker middle books and the crazy season finale, the emotional weight is going to be overwhelming in my opinion, which that really is the playbook of every great long form adaptation. Lord of the Rings took its time. Game of Thrones, at least in the early seasons, took its time, and I am personally rooting for this series. From everything that we've seen so far with the trailer and all of the signals that we're getting from the showrunners. They're trying to be faithful. Obviously, they're taking liberties on certain aspects, but hey, as long as they try to stick to the source material whenever it comes to most of the important things, then I will be happy. But that's going to wrap it up. Let me know in the comment section, what is one specific thing from the books you want to see the most in the HBO series that the films completely cut? Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe with your notifications turned on. Welcome to Wes Archives. This is where I talk about books and fantasy and, you know, sci-fi and stuff. So hit the sub button and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.